How's it going, everyone? ND Sean 45 coming at you. I know this is the setup that you guys aren't used to, but this setup is the only way that my guest and I could get some connection going and avoid some technical difficulties. So I am reduced right now to using my shitty computer downstairs. But the important thing is the message that we have to talk about in this video. So please welcome everyone. This man that is joining me, he is a writer and a blogger and a contributor to the website Shoebot.com. As you guys might remember, I interviewed Theodore Shoebot a couple months ago. This is his colleague, and his name is Andrew Bieszad. Andrew, welcome to the ND Sean 45 YouTube channel.
Thanks, Sean. Great to be here.
All right, now, Andrew, one of the things that I told Ted when I interviewed him is that he was a big influence to me. I discovered him at a time when I literally felt alone in the world of, social issues and stuff like that. It seemed like everyone around me was turning to heretical things. So finding him and his father, Waleed, it was really nice to see that I was not the only one out there that thought, hey, all this stuff is sick. This is a lot of craziness going on in this world. But I include you in that too because you contribute just as much to the website with your articles. I know you don't really show up on a lot of videos. That's more Ted's thing, but I do consider you a big influence to me as well to start talking about this stuff on my own YouTube channel and expose a lot of these evils that we're having to deal with in society. So it's really glad to have you on.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it because, let's face it, the job that Ted and I do does get quite lonely sometimes. So anybody else who wants to join in, have a voice, have a ring in, a ring in the pot, I guess, however you want to call it. I love it. It's a great thing.
Yeah, and I told Ted the same thing. There needs to be more guys like you out there who, aren't afraid to not only speak the faith, but to expose the evil things that are going on that so many people in our society seem to just be falling in love with, which I can never understand.
Well, for me, it's pretty simple, There's a lot of factors that went into why things developed as they did, but the way I look at it simply is that, in the current state of the way things we are today, a lot of things that are considered either historically, evil or just not good or are objectively not good is now to accept them as normal behavior. It's normal behavior. It's considered polite behavior in society. People have used the term clown world to describe America. It's a meme that came out of 4chan. Some people call it clown world. I call it crazy land. It's the same thing. You're looking at a society around you that's going crazy, and people are thinking that weirdness is normal, and weird behavior is normal. Abnormal behavior is the way you should act, and if you don't act that way, you're the problem. I think there was a very early Christian saint by the name of Saint Anthony of the Desert. I think it was. I might have gotten it wrong, but I think it was him. He said there's going to come a time in society when madness will be the rule, and people who oppose that madness will say, you are the mad one. It's something like that. And that's what we're living in. Obviously, it's not limited to just where we are now. It can repeat throughout history, but it's the same idea that we're at a point where everything around us is going crazy. It truly is. I mean, you can't look at me and tell me that half of the stuff we see out there is normal, whether it's allowing for the willful murder of the innocent, whether it's the proliferation and encouragement and legalization of sodomite behavior, whether it's the way that we accept blind obedience to very secular or bad ideas without any care for what the moral implications might be, and no one cares. I mean, people talk about politics. No one knows. One of the factors that Ted and I have hammered out constantly is the possibility for a return of a Fourth Reich. And there's evidence to support this. We bring it up, people say, well, we're not addressing, you're just crazy, you're not addressing the real problem. No, we have evidence for it. We still don't want to hear you. I mean, the list can go on. There's no end to it. There's no end to what we can talk about with it.
No, and like you said, you show people evidence. you provide actual proof of stuff that's going on, and it's like they don't want to believe it because their little fairy tale is not true. Like, for example, and we'll talk about a lot of topics in this video. You know, I got all the time in the world today. I'm sure you probably do too.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, the stuff, so many things people fall in love with, they don't want to believe that the stuff that they just adore and love so much is evil. It's degenerate. It's sickening. It's take your pick on whatever adjective.
Yeah.
And they think it's good.
Yeah.
And
I think it's very good. And the best thing is, see, right now your cat's in the background walking around. They're going to see us talking, and they're going to come out and they're going to say, "Look at that cat. That's why is that cat in the background of this video?" They're not going to hear anything we say. They want to just focus on that cat right there. Is what they're going to do. The only thing that they're going to talk about is that.
I didn't even.
This is what we're talking about. We live in a world of distractions.
And
she comes in like that. My cat does the same thing. She'll just come out and start meowing on me and walking around. They'll come around.
And that was Garfield, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, nice cat.
You can't make this up. Like I said, that was Garfield.
Yeah, because I thought
he looks like a nice cat.
He whines a lot, though.
I have to say that's main focus.
I'm sorry. I think we have a delay here, but I'll. I gotta let you.
What everyone focuses on is the distraction. Oh, that's fine. Oh, don't tell me the delay is coming back. It's awesome.
No, we're not breaking up.
Just for everyone out there, we've been trying to work through this delay in the communication, so it's been going back and forth. Perfect. We're not breaking up.
Yeah, that's correct. We're not breaking up.
Cool. Awesome.
I will work on the timing though.
But no, like you said, you're seeing a whole bunch of factors coalesce around it. Oh, don't worry about it. You're seeing so many factors that are coming around that no one wants to talk about, that no one wants to deal with, and eventually it's going to come to a head, and people are going to have to deal with it. And it's probably going to be in a way that they don't want to. And one of the points that Ted and I have tried to make for years is that we try to educate and warn the public about these things so that you're not caught empty-handed. I mean, you know, we most of our work is in trends analysis and finding out what the major trends for society are and where they're going. And a lot of times, one of the biggest complaints I get is, well, your view is too negative. And I don't think my view is actually negative. I think it's realistic. You know, you're a black pillar, as they'll say. I'm not a black pillar. I'm just a guy who sees things as they present them. If it's good, I tell you it's good. If it's bad, I tell you it's bad. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of good trends that I can expound on because there's so many, you know, serious systematic problems. Like I said, I could write a book about them. There's so much.
Yeah, exactly. And also, before we get too far into actually discussing several different topics that I have listed down here that I'd like to talk to you about, if you would, Andrew, like I said when I was interviewing Ted, a lot of people in my at least in my subscription list, they probably have no clue who you guys are. So if you would, Andrew, give everybody a little background about yourself and, you know, your faith background and how you came to be where you are now.
Sure. Well, long story short for me is I started out in Islamic studies back in 1998. I was actually in middle school at the time, and I became interested in it simply for reading. I started my studies after reading the autobiography of Malcolm X. I thought it was very interesting. And eventually, I got my bachelor's and master's degree in Islamic studies. I went on. I've written 2 books on Islam. I'm Catholic. I said that's always been that way. I'm not interested in becoming Muslim. I do not agree with the religion at all because it's objectively evil. I've said this for years. And how I got started working with Shubat.com was, you know, Ted and I should say Ted and his father Waleed ran in certain circles. I ran in certain other intellectual circles, but we had never actually crossed paths. The way I look at it is we knew a lot of the same people and knew a lot of the same networks. So if it was on a ball, I was on one point, and Ted and Waleed were on the opposite point. And no matter how we moved, we always moved in such a way that we never actually crossed. And what happened is we started talking one day, and I started writing with them, and our relationship just grew from there. And like I said, Ted and Waleed are wonderful people. They do a lot of very good work. They have done a lot of very good work for a long time, and they continue to do that. What we do, people look at the website, what we do, and they'll ask you, well, what is this? The short answer I have, like I mentioned earlier, is it's trends analysis. We try to take a view of society and trends and where the future is going and put it into the context of sacred scripture, sacred tradition, history, psychology, religious evolution, economics, finance, business, culture, health, medical issues. We don't, unlike a lot of other websites that specialize, say, in mining trends or metals trends or in social trends of a certain variety. We take that's a more of a vertical thinking approach. We prefer a lateral thinking approach, where we try to integrate all of these and see how they interlock. It's sort of the difference of studying how the gears of a machine and how they fit together instead of the specific mechanics of a gear itself alone within a machine. And that's what we try to do. So, because we're Catholic, we take that very seriously, and we go by what the church teaching says, and we do not really care what anybody thinks of us. A lot of times people, when they write articles or write news, they get scared that this might affect my career, affect our donors, our funders. Shubat.com takes care of its own funding. We take care of our own funding. We give everything away for free because we're providing a service to the public, to educate them, help teach them, and to hopefully give them the tools that they can better their lives and the people around them. One of the things that I said we run into is people being afraid of talking about certain issues. Well, we have no fear of that. I'll give you an example. There was an article you can find at Shubat.com that was put out by LifeSite News, the major pro-life website. Now, we've criticized the pro-life movement and the anti-LGBT movement in the United States for a long time because we said they will oppose it, and there are a lot of good people who really want to stand for moral truth. But a lot of the people who run the top levels of the organizations, they're afraid of losing funding, or they don't want a problem to go away because it's how they derive their means of income and their sustenance. So they will oppose it, but they will also find ways to say, well, we can't go all the way. We can't follow our ideas to their logical conclusions because they're afraid of losing their finance. We don't believe in that. We take it to there as full as we can. As I mentioned, LifeSite News, it's normally a great website, a lot of good resources. They had a very good story about sodomite abuse within the Catholic Church, sodomite priests. A lot of people are afraid to use that term or talk about the LGBT in the United States because, let's face it, it is considered socially inappropriate to do so now because a minimum 75% of all people under the age of 36 support sodomite marriage. That's marriage. That doesn't even include the actual act. And based on my estimations, I put it at over 90%. It's a super majority in the absolute sense, which is why it's causing cultural changes. This site had a very good article about this. It was a talk from a very well-known Dominican priest. I think it was Father Augustine Miley. They pulled that article and made it disappear from the internet, and they made the talk disappear. But I was able to go back, and it took me a little bit of legwork, but I found the whole story and the copy of the talk, and I archived it on Shubat.com for future reference. People are afraid to talk about serious issues because it does carry social repercussions and serious ones. But at the same time, truth must be told, and that's what we try to do. We try to tell that and how it affects trends. educate you so you can make your life better.
Oh, and that's absolutely true. And starting with the funding, for example, and I know Ted has said this a few times in videos before, but you guys actually used to receive about what, like $70,000 or so a year from Aubrey and Grace Chernick?
Oh yes, Aubrey Chernick, one of the big neoconservative funders out in the Los Angeles area. There's several of them. The Chernicks are one of them. There's another one. The CEO of Cognex Corporation, Robert Shillman, I believe, is another one. There's a bunch of these guys, and what these groups will do is they fund certain causes, organizations. Sometimes they even start these organizations or individuals. What?
PJ Media was another one, right?
PJ Media was another one. Yes, PJ Media absolutely was. And what happened is they would give the money, and they want you to promote certain ideas. Okay, fine. We don't have a problem promoting ideas, as long as the ideas are moral and right. I mean, it's one thing if you're receiving funding from somebody who, is doing it and you don't mind taking the money because it's agreeing with your views. That's fine. It's another issue when someone is giving you money and trying to use it as a tool to control you, especially to control you to do something that's not good. And that's what was happening with Shubat. The Chernicks were coming along, and they were saying, hey, you're writing certain stories. This was stories about the Sodomites and the problems with sodomite behavior. And they said, we don't want you to write those stories anymore. And neither Ted nor Waleed submitted to it. They said no, because this is what we believe. And they said, well, we'll pull your funding. And they said, Waleed and Ted said, go ahead, do what you want. And so they did. It doesn't. So when people talk about how money is used to control others, it's true. It's real. But that's one of the ways that makes us unique, is we don't care about the finance issue. We like funding. It helps us to do our mission work, especially when it comes to helping persecuted Christians in other countries, which are most of our work lately has been in Mexico, through our contacts there. But just because you stop funding doesn't mean we're going to disappear, because we've taken care of that avenue. We have our own plan that we work with. Waleed is very involved on that side. He's very skillful when it comes to his management. People a lot of times ask me, well, where's Waleed on the website? I don't see him anymore. Well, just because you don't see him doesn't mean he's not there. He's just as much there as he was in the past. It's just in a less visible way. So he takes care of all that aspect. He sees to it that everything is ordered and organized and done right. And Ted and I do a lot of the research and writing, and it works very well. It's wonderful. But he's very much there.
Yeah, he's basically the one that's setting up the platform, which is just as important as the ones like you guys that are out in the field, like you said, doing the research and doing the videos and the articles and all that, and doing the exposing of evil things. Because if there's no structure, the rest is going to fail.
And exactly. I mean, he's like I said, he's like the stagehand. The stagehand doesn't get credit when the play goes on. But if you don't have the stagehand, you don't have the effects. The curtain doesn't come up, doesn't go down, and all the mechanics that go into running the play itself will fail. It's not a question of they might fail. They are going to fail, and it's not going to work. And they are just as important, if not more important, than the actors themselves. So just because we're public figures does not mean that he is any less of a public figure. He still is. But he just has a different role that he assumes in that. And, that is, speaking of our roles and what we do, one of the issues that Ted and I have found over the years is that people talk about the alternative media and people spreading ideas. Well, from our perspective, in our opinion, especially my opinion, the amount of people speaking original opinions or a divergence of a few very popular ideas is increasingly shrinking. It's not there anymore. You might have a guy who does a YouTube channel here or there, or somebody, but you don't have a serious discussion, a serious base like you once had. It never was large, but it has continually gotten smaller. So people think, well, I have a different opinion than the rest of, what the other side, what the left wants to think. But really, you're just regurgitating the same popular opinion that everyone else is talking about, just in your own words. There's the amount of originality and thought, especially based in moral teaching, is dying before us, and we're getting a serious polarization of public opinion, so much that it's a threat to the people themselves. Because fundamentally speaking, and I hammer at this, there is no difference between the so-called left and the so-called right. It doesn't exist. The only thing you have is the flavoring. It's like Coke and Pepsi. Do you want flavor with this stuff, or do you want flavor with that stuff? It's still the same mix of sugar and high fructose corn syrup and caramel color.
Yeah, no, there really is no difference between the two sides. I mean, how many times, and actually a perfect example, the so-called Equality Act that they just passed through Congress. Look at how many Republican voters, because like I'm not trying to just lump it all into one, but you figure Democrats they lean more towards liberals, obviously. Republicans more towards conservatives. Well, that's not how it is. Just because you're a Republican doesn't mean that you're not a liberal. That doesn't mean that you won't betray your own party and go against your party's platforms. I mean, another example.
Correct. You're supposed.
Yeah, another example that I forget his name, but that Oklahoma politician who tried to pass. Got something that popped up here. 1 second. That Oklahoma politician, he tried to pass an anti-abortion bill that didn't even get heard it didn't even make it to the floor. And who did he get the most backlash from? The pro-life movement. He was betrayed by his own side.
Exactly. Betrayed by his own side. And that's the issue that you have to deal with. This is here. You have, like I said, the Republicans and the Democrats, however you want to call politics, whatever you want to structure it, it's all the same party, because people don't want to talk about this. People talk about cultural Marxism and socialism. So I want to tell you something. We already have socialism here, and it's only increasing. And the amount of direct support for direct socialism among all generations has and continues to rise with each year. It's a trend that is most likely not going to be stopped. The only difference is what kind of socialism do you want? Do you want the economic and class socialism of the so-called cultural Marxists and the international socialists? We call them communists. Or do you want the blood and soil nationalism of the nationalized socialists? National socialists, we all know what that means. How do you want it? Because you're advocating for the same issue. The issue is not one of whether this party is good or not. It's a philosophical issue. What's your philosophy? And the philosophy we have has been leading to this for well over a century. It's no surprise. It's been happening. We've been able to delay it, sometimes mitigate it, not really reverse it. It's just continued, and you're only seeing a natural fruition here. So any idea that you think you're going to make a massive change, or that a lot of times your views are going to change the world, not only is it wishful thinking, but you're making yourself an unwitting tool of those who want to propagate bad ideas. I'll give you an example from Shubat.com. Shubat.com is very anti-Islam. We all have been, because Waleed is a former Muslim who grew up in a Muslim family, and he knows Islam very well. He's very educated. Ted obviously comes his education from his father, so he understands. He's learned from his father very well. Myself, I have my master's degree in Islam. I have my master's degree in Islamic studies, and what happens is, being in Islamic studies, I've seen a lot of things that are not good. And so when I criticize Islam, I do it not from a perspective that's based on politics or some sort of weird racial division, weird ideology I want to promote. I do it because of theological reasons. I do it because I objectively want the salvation of these people as well as of other people. And I do not believe this is the true religion, because it's not. And I have a moral obligation to speak about it, and it's something that is very brings out a lot of passion within me. It always has. So I've been in this for 20 years. What we found, though, is that a lot of the so-called anti-Islam movement in the United States it's not anti-Islam because it actually wants to help the Muslim people, or because it believes that Islam is not good, but it's anti-Islam because it's a way to leverage political support for eugenics. That's what it is. Because all these anti-Islam movements, and we exclusively at Shubat.com have exposed this. We can show you our connections between the so-called counter-jihad movement and neo-Nazis, drug traffickers, Satanists, major political parties supporting eugenics, and outright eugenicists. It's not an accident when you have people talking, when you see the same people in the movement dealing with a man such as Sigurður Jónsson out of Iceland, an open Satanist, the largest drug trafficker in Iceland, one of the largest in Europe and in the world. It's not an accident when you see, people hanging out with the Sweden Democrats, which is Pamela Geller, Robert Spencer. People like Charles Murray, a homosexual who has Darwinistic ideas. Helmut Nyborg, who promotes outright eugenics. I mean, this is no accident. People associate themselves with pagans, with Hindu nationalists who want to slaughter Christians, but they will claim that they're, quote, against the jihad. Who are these people that we're associating with? It's easy to say, well, we have all these people on our side who are fighting this evil of Islam. Okay, I'll agree Islam is not good. But what are they fighting for? They're fighting for power for themselves. It's just like with the French Revolution. Now, the French revolutionaries, they had some good points, actually. If you look at them, there was a lot of corruption in the government. But was it about the corruption? Or were they using the corruption to attack Christianity, to attack the church, and to seize power for themselves at the expense of the people? That's what was really going on.
Well, and also,
that's what we see with this.
And also, it's interesting. So
hence why people will say, well, why don't you talk about Islam anymore? Shubat.com.
Well, it's interesting that you brought that up, because that was actually led me into one of my next notes. I was going to ask you about the alt-right, the counter-jihad, and Pamela Geller, Robert Spencer. You're absolutely right. Not only are they hanging out with these people that are very evil, like that Satanist, like Charles Murray, which Charles Murray I'll make a special note about him in a second, but they also hang out with Milo Yiannopoulos, which you and Ted, I know, have exposed that.
Oh, Milo Yiannopoulos.
Yeah, you guys have exposed that piece of crap many times, and he's another one. So many people love this guy, especially Christians, people who call themselves Christians. They love this guy so much.
Oh, yes.
But yet they fail to see, and you guys have proved you've shown the evidence many times. I mean, you think him being a homosexual would be enough of a red flag, but no. You have this guy going on interviews, telling the interviewer that homosexuals are superior to the rest of us, that they have superior genetic makeups, and that makes them, the superior being. They inherit higher IQs. That's eugenics right there in a couple sentences. He goes on as well to say that he wants the legal age of consent to be lowered to 16. He was drunk when he said all this stuff.
Yeah.
He wasn't in the right state of mind. He says he spoke too loosely, which in translation is I accidentally told the truth when I shouldn't have done it. But yet nobody seems to care about that.
Oops, stuff. I got caught.
Yeah, exactly. And nobody seems to care about that.
No one cares about that stuff because, like you said, Milo Yiannopoulos in China. I mean, when he goes on, I think it was Joe Rogan's show, I
Who,
think it
by
was
the
Joe
way,
Rogan
Joe
show.
Rogan, I think, is another
He goes on the
heretic.
Joe Rogan show, and he starts talking. Oh, Joe Rogan, yeah, Joe Rogan is another piece of work. He's another eugenist too. But Milo goes on, and he's not good either. He's a lot of problems with him too. But he goes on the Joe Rogan show, and Joe Rogan's interviewing him, and Milo Yiannopoulos is talking about parties he goes to with very young boys who are there. Excuse me, what sort of adult goes to parties with very young boys and speaks of it in that way? And then afterwards, because of that statement, he was stripped of all of his previous affiliations and power because they accused him of being a pedophile. And yet people still stand beside him. And these just weren't anybody who stripped him from his position. He lost all his funding. He lost all of his advertisers. He lost all those people who were marketing him. Accused him of being a pedophile. And they obviously had good reason to if they're willing to go that far. And he's not willing to contest it. Well, he says, well, it's the left's fault. The left just came after me. Son, the left didn't make you go to a party with a bunch of little boys, as you admitted.
Well, and another
They
thing,
just
too,
didn't.
with that... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead
You
with your
can't
point.
blame this on somebody else. Oh, no, it's fine. You can't blame the left for doing this because this isn't a left-right issue. This is an issue of you got caught saying something. All right, fine, you got caught, whatever. But no, he doesn't give up. Then he goes on to the Michael Voris show. Michael Voris is another man who claims he's a former homosexual, but the fact is we don't know that. We objectively don't know that. And he can say he's not. A lot of people can say things. We don't. The fact is we know that he was one for many years. We know that there is a movie that he did with his company, the same company that Church Militant operates under, if I'm not mistaken. It's called Concept Communications, I believe is the name, where he goes out and he talks about, he doesn't talk about it, but it made a movie called Double Trouble. What is this film? I believe he made it with his former sodomite partner. I believe so. I'm trying to recall this from memory, obviously, so I'm doing the best I can here. That's very troubling. So then he goes out, he invites Milo onto his show, and he starts talking about lowering the age of consent. And Milo, like you said, says 16. Why does he say 16? Because most of the sexual abuse, if you look at it, among the LGBT, is sodomite men targeting teenage males. Is the teenagers is the issue. It's homosexual pedophilia, to be specific. They want that like on the edge of puberty, just after, time frame is when a lot of your abuse takes place. This is borne out by statistics in the Catholic Church about sexual abuse. People say there's a sexual abuse problem. There is no sexual abuse problem in the Catholic Church, at least in terms of scale. Indeed, one case is a problem. But when you look at the actual numbers, 4% of priests are involved. I think it's 4% of cases of sexual abuse in the Catholic Church involving priests. And of that 4%, 81% is homosexual in nature. And of that 81%, 2/3 is older men against teenage males. The numbers are very consistent, and they've been borne out generally in that same pattern. So what he's advocating for is the very behavior that the John Jay report, that was the name of the original report, in the Catholic Church, and other reports have warned about. He's advocating for it. He's lobbying for it by his statements and his associations he's making. What else is one to conclude?
Well, and also something else, in addition to what you just said right there, Milo, I think it was also the interview that he did with Michael Voris. He's talking about how I was abused. I was sexually abused when I was 13 years old, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I'm a victim. That kind of thing. But yet at the same time, he's, and yes, I have sympathy for anybody who gets sexually abused or molested as a child. I can't make that clear enough. So I do have sympathy for him in that regards.
Right.
But at the same time, This guy is not 13 years old anymore. He is a grown-ass man, and I said that I used those same exact words in my interview with Ted when we talked about this. But he's now an adult man, and
He
he's now,
absolutely is.
and yeah, I know, but it's true. It's true. He's now a grown man, and here he is saying
Yeah.
things that it was good that he was with an older man when he was 13, and he's now promoting pedophilia and pederasty. So all these same bad things that happened to him, he's now going out and promoting.
This guy's going on the show with that other degenerate, Gavin McInnes, and he's making out with him. There's a clip of Milo and Gavin McInnes making out from 2 years ago, I think. It's absolutely disgusting. They're saying they did it to I think it was an active protest somehow. I mean, Sean, am I going to go over and tongue kiss you on the lips?
Oh
That's
yeah,
disgusting.
for the sake of fighting,
Men don't do that.
For the sake of
that's
fighting
degenerate
radical
behavior.
Islam.
Yeah, for the sake of fighting radical Islam. I mean,
That's not going to stop it. That's
another
going to make
thing
the
too. This
radical
is another
Islam
thing that most
come in
people don't
converse
seem to
completely.
get about Islam. Yeah, it's completely degenerate behavior. I'll tell you something about Islam and homosexuality. Waleed has pointed this out. If you were to look at homosexuality in Islam, you will find that Islam, there's actually a lot of support for homosexuality in Islam. The transgender variety is actually permitted, and there is evidence, scriptural evidence in the Quran and Islamic sacred tradition, and is borne out by history to support this. So you can see this in Turkey, you can see this in Iran, you can see it in Afghanistan. You can see it in the life of Muhammad himself. So this isn't so the LGBT is not something that's unknown to Islam. It's very well known to it. But you see this constant, emphasis. Islam hates gays. Islam wants to kill all gays. No, actually it doesn't. There are some people who do. But the theology itself does not absolutely ban the practice so long as it is done within the confines of Islamic law. So this very concept that people come to me and tell me, oh, Islam just hates gays. First off, it shows your absolute ignorance of Islamic theology because you don't know what it teaches because you would have been aware of this. Second is that second issue it has is that making out with some guy on the lips is not going to stop Islam. It's just going to make the situation a lot worse.
Yeah, and also, before I go on here, to everybody watching right now, again, I apologize for there might be a little delay between Andrew and I, but as I said at the beginning, this is the best that we could do. So I hope you guys can understand this exchange pretty well. But